Hello, this is meteorologist Brad Winter from Region Weather Live, your YouTube source for weather across the Dakotas and Minnesota. It's been a while, folks. Haven't had a whole lot to talk about, but we do have the possibility of a little bit of severe weather coming into South Dakota for Monday. So we're going to talk about that, and also all the wet weather moving through our region through the week and a cool down that's expected on the back end. So just a quick look at our upper levels and what's going to be causing all the rain and just general wetness for our region. You can see this big low pressure system pulling out of the Rockies, and this jet stream that's going to be moving off from the southwest and pulling up all kinds of moisture into our area. A fairly decent jet stream that's going to be pushing into our area, especially as we get a little bit later into the week, late Monday, and then going on into Tuesday as well. Now you could see at those upper levels how the winds were coming up out of the south and pushing right into South Dakota. As we go down a little bit in the levels, the winds are a little bit out of the southeast. So we've got just a little bit of some of those rotating storms possible as we get into the afternoon on Monday. However, by the time of peak heating, while we do have some of those southerly winds poking in, they're not particularly strong. If they are a little bit stronger, it's more in the central to southwestern parts of South Dakota. So I think what we're looking at when we're talking about the potential for some severe weather with that type of wind, and you can see how the dew points are just, they're just kind of on the edge of what we like to see for that severe type of activity. I think what we're mainly looking at is some hail producers out of these. And so within that south central to southwestern parts of South Dakota, and it does kind of include southeast a little bit as well. I'll show you why I think that isn't as good of a chance, at least for parts of South Dakota. But nevertheless, you areas at the moment are in the slight risk category for seeing some severe weather. That wind potential, again, kind of drifts back to the southwestern parts of the state. The hail will be the main threat. You could see where we've got that 15% chance that kind of noses into South Dakota, and even a little bit of hatch that gets real close to at least Sioux City, Iowa, so just the tip of South Dakota there. But of course, with just the little bit of rotation, we have a little slight risk of that isolated chance of a tornado as well as we get into the afternoon hours. And so we're going to start off by taking a real close look at South Dakota. And you can see we've got the timestamp. It's central time up here at the top, so we can pay attention there. So we got a few showers to start off the day here and there, but the storms really don't get going, of course, until late afternoon, more so in the evening, where we're seeing probably some storms across southwestern parts of South Dakota by about 6 p.m. Central Time, so 5 p.m. Mountain Time. And again, most of these I think are going to be, the main threat is going to be hail as it moves through the region. Now, we still have that potential at least of some stronger winds associated with it. A lot of times when you do get the builder or the heavier buildups of these storms, eventually they do have to collapse a little bit. You might see some strong gusts out of it. But again, I think the hail is going to be the main problem. You can see where, as I was pointing out earlier, how kind of the main focus for these storms are going to be kind of the south central to southwest part of South Dakota. Pretty much how this model is laying it out for the severe storms. We're already looking at 11 p.m. and midnight, and then we're already at 1 a.m. on Tuesday, and then we've just got some general thunderstorms left over through the remainder of the night. Now, don't believe me, here's another convective model look at it, and basically it's kind of pointing in the same areas. Southwest, south central parts of South Dakota are the main kind of concerns as those storms really begin to fire up. And then as we get to 11 o'clock at midnight and after, more storms do increase in coverage, but they don't look to be quite as strong. So taking just a little bit of a wider view now, again, we continue to have southerly winds pulling up all the moisture into our region. This is looking Monday morning. And then as we get into the afternoon and evening hours and those storms begin to fire up, and of course that just brings more moisture to the remainder of the region and pushing it into Minnesota and North Dakota as well as we get into the morning hours of Tuesday morning around 6 a.m. Now through the remainder of the day, Tuesday, more rain, more thunderstorms, those storms particularly across eastern Dakotas and into southern parts of Minnesota. And then as we get into the afternoon hours, this is around 2-3 p.m. or so, we might have the possibility of some isolated storms that could get severe mainly across southern parts of Minnesota, perhaps far southeastern parts of South Dakota as we get to about that 3-4 p.m. time frame. But mostly, in general, we're just looking at the typical thunderstorms, rain throughout the day on Tuesday. Again, mostly across the eastern Dakotas and southern parts of Minnesota. And then as we go through the night, Tuesday night, this is midnight, and get into Wednesday morning, you can see how those rain showers move into northern parts of Minnesota. Now, taking a look at a little different model as we get into Wednesday morning, we start to pull in some colder air on the backside of this storm system. So that might mean a little bit of mix of snow, perhaps some sleet in there as well on the backside of this, particularly across northeastern parts of North Dakota, maybe northern parts of Minnesota as we get into the morning hours on Wednesday. But as we kind of warm up through the morning hours Wednesday, whatever kind of mix there is, it's probably going to transition right back to rain. So we're really not expecting much in the way of winter type of precipitation, but don't be surprised if you see some flakes mixed in. And the one thing you're definitely going to notice is the cold air on the backside of this. We've been spoiled now. We've been seeing some really, really warm temperatures over the past few days. But as we get into Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, particularly across the north, we got all this cold air funneling in on the backside of this system. So we're going to be stuck with some cooler temperatures for a while as we get into next weekend. And it looks like it's probably not going to rebound until the early part of the following week. So just a quick look at our high temperatures for Monday. We're looking at 50s and 60s across the northeast, 70s and 80s across the southwest. Tuesday begins to cool off as that rain-cooled air really takes hold. 50s generally across most of the areas, with some 60s, perhaps even near 70 across southeastern parts of South Dakota. Wednesday, 50s and 60s with some 40s for highs across the north. By Thursday, generally everybody in the 40s and 50s, some upper 30s for high temperatures across the far north. Friday, generally in the 40s. Saturday, rebound just a little bit into the 50s. How much rain is expected? Well, it's going to really be variable dependent on where some of these storms line up throughout the days, because obviously with the thunderstorms, you're going to get a little more precipitation. But generally speaking, we're looking at maybe a half inch across northeastern parts of North Dakota, northern Minnesota, roughly. Then as you get a little bit further to the south, again, mainly across the eastern parts of the Dakotas and southern parts of Minnesota, we're looking at an inch, perhaps even 2 across some areas. Unfortunately, western parts of North Dakota are looking least likely to receive any kind of beneficial precipitation out of this storm system. We might see around a half inch to an inch, maybe an inch and a half if some areas are lucky across the higher elevations of the Black Hills in western parts of South Dakota. So definitely some beneficial rain for a good chunk of our viewing area. Some severe weather to look out for, mainly for Monday afternoon across south central, southwestern parts of South Dakota, maybe our southeastern parts of South Dakota as well, and then maybe a little bit Tuesday on the southern parts of Minnesota. And then other than that, we got a little bit of a cool down now. Cool down, I mean, we're still looking in the 40s for high temperatures, so not bad. Maybe upper 30s for some areas across the far north. So really, I mean, in general, it's not that bad. It's just not as warm as what we've been seeing, which has been just so out of season. Obviously, we've been very fortunate and kind of spoiled with how the temperatures are. And I want my 70s back, darn it. I don't want 40s for highs. I like the 70s, so bring them back quickly. Please, Mother Nature. All right, everybody, that's all I've got for you. So for those of you across South Dakota, just keep an eye on the weather. Nothing too big, mainly hail makers, but just keep an eye on the sky as you get into the late afternoon and evening hours. For Region Weather Live, I'm meteorologist Brad Winter. Everybody have a good day.